Hi, everyone. My name is Michele Kimczak. I am from the Connection, Inc., where I've worked for over 25 years. I am the Director of Training and Grant Writing, and I've had many years' experience in direct practice and in administration, working with peers. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So I'd like to welcome you to this training on peer support, turning wounds into wisdom. So I want you to think about this question. What is the opposite of addiction? I'm going to give you a hint. The answer is not sobriety or abstinence. Here's another hint. The opposite of addiction is actually connection. And so I want us to think for a moment about this. It's in a way that's very similar to trauma. There's something about the experience of being a trauma survivor or having an addiction that separates someone from the rest of the world. Relationships get ruptured. People feel very much alone, either through the stigma of others or through sort of stigmatizing themselves. There might be a sense of worthlessness or shame. And certainly often there's a feeling that no one really understands them or what they're going through. So in the human services, we help people recover through the relationships that we form with them. Certainly in grant writing, I'm asked a lot about evidence-based practices, and we teach people professional skills in the Connections Training Department. All of those are absolutely very important. But in the end, we heal through relationships. People who have felt stigmatized and less than finally feel seen, respected, and cared for by a helper. I want to read a quote from Bessel van der Kolk, who is a trauma guru. More than anything else, being able to feel safe with other people defines mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. So again, there's this idea that through relationships with caring helpers, people can reconnect with their natural supports and form new relationships and friendships. And this is what is at the heart of the role of peer. So what is a peer? Here's a simple dictionary definition. Someone who is a person's equal, belonging to the same social group. That's from the Webster Dictionary. A very simple human services definition is a peer is a person in recovery who offers services and support to other people in recovery. That's from Larry Davidson from Yale's Perch program. There are currently many terms in use. There are peer navigators, peer support specialists, recovery support specialists, and recovery coaches. Some peers are certified, other peers are not. But the commonality, regardless of the actual title, is that a peer is a person with specific lived experience who identifies as such in a professional context to form a special connection with individuals who share this common life challenge. So this last point is really important. I do a lot of trainings for case managers, client service aides, leadership even. And when I ask people, why did you enter the field of human services? The answer is often, I want to help. I'm a natural fixer, which by the way can cause problems. But many, many people actually say that they have some kind of lived experience or history with an issue, let's say substance use, and they have recovered successfully and now they want to give back. The interesting part of the peer role is that it is an expectation of the job of peer to share that experience, as opposed to people who have that experience but don't necessarily have to or even want to share it. So in other words, there are peers who are peers by a formal title and a job description, in which case the expectation is that you will share your lived experience. And there are many, many other peers who share that lived experience and sort of use that wisdom to inform their work, but don't necessarily share that information with clients. So peers are most often members of mental health and substance abuse treatment teams, but there are many other potential applications, many of which we have used here at the Connection. In the criminal justice field, you can be a peer if you share a history of incarceration. In the field of children and families, I've had former foster children, and by the way, that's my history here. For over 20 years, I worked in the foster care field, and there were many foster children who said, I want to be a peer mentor to other kids who are in the foster care system. Also, parents whose children are in the custody of DCF. Very unique and terrifying life experience to have your children removed. And so being a peer, right, knowing in your heart what that is like is very powerful. Problem gambling disorders. In the field of housing, we've had peers who have experienced the trauma of homelessness. And even in the medical field, people who share diagnoses of chronic physical illness. So there are many different types of lived experience. But what all of these share are these values, all right? All based on a very person-centered approach to the work. So in terms of safety and trust, and by the way, these are the values of trauma-informed care, the expectation is that peers will always be non-judgmental and deeply respectful, right, of the individuals that they're serving and helping. Culturally sensitive and non-judgmental, regardless of who or what the person has done or what they might do in the future. Honest, direct, transparent communication. No one wants to work with someone when they feel that there's a hidden agenda. Choice and collaboration are central to a person-centered approach. Peer services should always be voluntary, right? We shouldn't be forcing people to talk to a peer. And there's this idea of equally shared power, right? As we said, this sort of harkens back to the dictionary definition that a peer is an equal in terms of the peer is not going to be punitive, not going to institute some kind of, consequences, right? So there's equally shared power, and the work together is a true collaboration. We're not imposing something on clients. And the overarching goal is empowerment. And how do we really empower people? By having person-driven, meaningful services. And so what does that mean? What does meaningful services involve? I have to answer this question a lot for grants, and it means a lot of things, but mostly it means what are the goals of this individual sitting before you? It involves getting to know them as a person, not as a client, right? And finding out what is most meaningful for them, and then delivering those services in a way that they can truly access them. So for instance, if English is someone's second language and you're running a group and they're not understanding half of what's going on, that's not a meaningful service for them. So what defines a meaningful service is very much dependent on the person who is sitting in front of you. And of course, strengths-based work, right? We always want to notice, highlight, reinforce people's strengths and not be involved in focusing on their problems. It's not what is wrong with you, right? How have you survived and gotten to this point? And how can we build on that to make a better future for you? So again, the hallmark of trauma of any kind is feeling isolated and very much alone. I remember that the foster children used to say to me, No one understands me. And people wouldn't really get that. They'd say, well, you have foster parents who are nice and you have a therapist. What do you mean? And really what they meant was, unfortunately, never having had the experience of feeling that someone gets what it's like to be kicked out of 10 homes, right? It's a very unique, traumatizing life experience. There are many veterans who are in veteran support groups for over 20 years because there's an incredibly powerful bond that forms between people who have been through similar traumatic life experiences. And so to overcome this sense of isolation and being different and sort of not belonging anywhere, peers provide a critical bridge role as people who have been there and people who get it, right? Everyone wants to work with someone who gets it and understands them. Research shows that peers are extremely effective in helping people reach their goals and in helping people heal. Research-based benefits of peer support include increased satisfaction with program services. Programs seem better when there's a peer involved. Better relationships with case managers and other team members. This was really interesting. About 5 years ago, the Connection Institute did a research project comparing services for clients who were formerly incarcerated, having a peer mentor, and the other half of clients didn't have the peer mentor. And one of the outcomes that we really didn't anticipate was that the clients with the peer mentor actually had a better relationship with their case managers and other members of the team. Reduced criminal activity, reduced utilization of social services, reduced substance use, increased access to community supports. And lastly, there's this very important finding that being a peer supporter actually enhances one's own recovery. That's really important. So everyone benefits, the team, the client served, and you. So I want to talk now about professional boundaries, how to establish and maintain a healthy therapeutic relationship, which is sometimes more challenging for the peer role. So in the human services, in the helping professions, there's something called the zone of helpfulness. Okay, and so this is at the heart of that therapeutic relationship that I talked about before, this important relationship that helps people heal. And this is where most of our work with clients should take place. When we veer off in any one direction, we are risking a boundary crossing or a boundary violation, or not being helpful at all to our clients. And that's what we don't want to happen. And so what does it look like if we're over-involved with our clients? Well, this involves developing a relationship that goes beyond the professional or imposing our values on our clients. When we're under-involved, it includes disinterest, neglect of our professional duties, and distancing ourselves from clients when conflict occurs. All right, and that's important to keep in mind. We can't disengage just because of conflict. Clarity about our helping role for ourselves and our clients is very much central to our work. So all codes of ethics, regardless whether it's the field of psychology, social work, counseling, all of them specify that it is never appropriate to engage in a dual relationship. So let's say having a sexual relationship, a romantic relationship, and even a friendship with the people that we're serving. And this can be challenging for the peer role because remember, we just talked about the fact that it's a relationship of equals. And so we need to be clear on the distinction between a friendship and a therapeutic relationship, just as much as our clients do. And if we're not clear, there's no way that our clients can be clear. You know, are you my helper or my friend? How can I distinguish? So a friendship is based on some kind of natural affinity or attraction. right? We like each other. There's something about this person that I want to hang around with them. A professional therapeutic relationship is based on a treatment contract. Right? People are in programs, they're sent by funders to receive certain services, and they actually sign paperwork. Now, will we feel a natural attraction to some of the people? And I'm not even talking about sexual attraction. We're going to like some of the people that we work with more than others. Sure. All right. And there's nothing wrong than that. But the point is that in a professional relationship, it needs to stay professional. A friendship is based on mutual respect, trust, and non-judgmental acceptance. Hopefully, most of the time, our friends are non-judgmental. They may push us sometimes, but in general, in a true friendship, we should not feel judged all the time. That's also true in the professional relationship. However, the mutual respect, trust, and non-judgment, that burden is on us. And this is sometimes hard for many people in the field who, again, enter the field to help people, who want to do good, who treat clients with a lot of respect. The fact of the matter is, we will not always receive that in return. We know that whatever life struggles people are going through, whatever crisis situation they may be managing, sometimes things get said that may be horrible to us and hurtful. As the professional in this therapeutic relationship, we must always, regardless of the treatment we get, display to a client respect and a non-judgmental attitude. There's mutuality in a friendship. In a therapeutic relationship, there's also mutuality, but we refer to it as collaboration, right? When we develop goals, when we brainstorm about resources, services, it is a collaborative effort, right? Treatment planning should never be that the professional creates goals for the client and the client says, yeah, sure, they look good. And then every whatever quarter, this piece of paper is put in front of someone. Hey, sign this. We have to update your treatment plan. That's not a good treatment plan, right? A truly good treatment plan should be a collaborative effort. The goals on it should be deeply meaningful to clients, and the objectives should be achievable, right? We should never have a treatment plan where people are never reaching their goals. That's a bad treatment plan. And as peers, right, we know very well that we can't be 20 steps ahead of people. Sometimes people have to start at 1. We want them to start at 10. Well, sometimes we have to take a step back to help people get to where they need to be. In a friendship, interactions are based on mutual enjoyment with few limits, right? Whatever two people feel like doing together. That's not the case, of course, in a therapeutic relationship, where every interaction is about helping clients meet their treatment goals. In fact, I think this is a really good measure. Sometimes people will say, well, how can I tell if something that I'm doing with a client is more friendship oriented or if it's on a professional level? And the answer is what you're doing or thinking about doing related to the reason they're in your program and related to their treatment goals? So, for instance, in our criminal justice program peer research project, one of the things that the peers did was to go grocery shopping with the men that they were supporting. And very powerful experience. Some of the men had been incarcerated for, let's say, 15 years. And just the experience of being in a grocery store, one of the peers said, we were standing in the cookie aisle, and I guess in prison, there's like one kind of cookie, Oreos. And the client literally was almost paralyzed in the cookie aisle, looking at all of the overwhelming choices, and literally was just standing there. And so this is the kind of thing that peers are in a unique place to understand, to appreciate what that person is going through, and to help them through it. So, of course, grocery shopping in that context is totally within the bounds of a therapeutic relationship. So there's not strict limits, but it always has to do with, why am I being the mentor of this person? What are their goals? In a friendship, the relationship is ongoing and proceeds organically. What do I mean by that? Sometimes friendships end, but they end for various reasons. In a therapeutic relationship, it has distinct phases. There is a beginning phase, a middle phase where you work together, and then it eventually ends when the client discharges. A friendship is a relationship of equals. Both parties ideally will share equal power. In a therapeutic relationship, there is always an inherent power differential. Now, you might be thinking, well, you just said before that a definition of peer is that people are equals. Yes, equals in the sense of shared lived experience. However, in any professional context, we have to be very much aware that just by virtue of the fact that we're in a paid position, there is some sort of power dynamic going on. And we just have to be conscious of that. And of course, never use that to try to steer clients toward a certain course of treatment, maybe that we think they should be taking part in. And so this inherent power differential is inherent in the role, and the fact that you are getting paid to help them do something. You're also maybe taking case notes and recording their progress. And so these things have meaning to clients, and we just have to be sensitive to that. So being on the same page with the people that we're supporting is so important to establishing a sense of safety and trust. Okay, everyone should know what is what. And so how do we do that? Clients have the right to know what they're signing up for when they get involved in any kind of program, right? Even if they're sent by a funder and they have no choice, right? They should know, what am I expected to do here? What is it going to be like for me here? And so from the very beginning of a client's involvement with you and your program, right, there should be clarification of the program goals. Why does this program exist? Right? Why does it even exist? Which should explain to them why they've been sent there. Clarification of the nature and purpose of your role. This is so important. You know, we talk about treatment teams, and I remember from the foster care world, there were many times when I just don't think we did this part very well. And so I can't tell you how many times kids would say to my case managers, right? And so we're a private program who is contracted by the state. We never really thought to explain that to the kids. And so they were like, are you my DCF worker? Like, who are you? Why are you coming to my house every week? And so we have to just be very conscious of explaining to clients, what is my role? And not only that, what is my role versus these other roles, right? What is the difference between me as your peer mentor and your case manager, right? What kind of issues will you bring to your case manager? What kind of issues might you bring to me? What will you do with your case manager? This is what I will do with you. And we don't have to cover every single thing, but the point here is that the more that people know what to expect on a human level, right? If we're talking about trauma-informed care, the more at ease they will be. No one wants to be in a situation where they're sent somewhere and everything is just sort of up in the air and uncertain. Talk with your clients about your availability, right? How can they reach you? What are the expectations for returning calls? Are you going to be available 24/7? Maybe that's part of your job description. And if so, that's great. But if it's not part of your job description, you should not be answering your phone 24/7. So this is why it's really important for you to have clarity about your own role, what is in your job description, so that you can explain that to your clients. What are policies regarding canceled visits? emergency situations. And this last one, what will success look like? You know, again, people are sent to programs a lot of times by state funders. What will a successful discharge look like? And what is your role in helping them get there? Having these conversations early on really sets a tone of professionalism. And also, I'm here to help and support you. I want to talk for a minute about special considerations for work with trauma survivors. Many, if not most, of the individuals that you are supporting probably have a significant trauma history. And so what do we need to know about that, and why is it relevant? Traumatic experiences are overwhelming events that greatly impact our sense of safety in the world. That's why it's so important to establish safety in whatever way we can for the people that we're supporting, because that's what trauma takes away. And it's very common for people who have experienced trauma to be triggered. I mean, and this is a whole other training about trauma and triggers, but trauma is a human phenomenon, and our primitive brains want to protect us from being hurt again. And so triggers are very common. Trauma, particularly in early childhood, often impacts one's ability to keep themselves safe by developing and maintaining healthy boundaries. Okay, and so that's why I spoke a lot about boundaries and how to set those limitations, which are not actually limitations. They do establish a what's what type situation, right? And the more that people are clear about what's acceptable, what's not, that establishes safety. In terms of relationships, some individuals with a trauma history are going to form quick, very intense attachments to you. Some people on the other end of the spectrum might have a lot of difficulty trusting others. And what that looks like is that they develop behaviors that may alienate those who are trying to help them, being you. This is a really uncomfortable situation for helpers, you know, again, who enter the field to help. And so it's not a pleasant situation to start a conversation with someone and you're sharing about your lived experience and they're kind of shut up like a clam, right? They're not going to say anything. And so we have to just be aware, especially when there's a trauma history, that trust is not established immediately. We need to show people that we care about them, not through our words, but through our behaviors, through setting these healthy boundaries, and then people will hopefully open up to us. And so again, clear boundaries, taking trauma history into account, are one of the most important ways we can keep clients safe and engaged in what we're trying to do with them. So what are some of the things that peers do in programs? The ideal roles for peers are, again, based on more of an equality mode. All right, so peers might be hired to do outreach and engagement, maybe mentoring, like in our research project for our criminal justice program. They might be hired to run groups, to be a crisis responder, to do community networking, or to be trainers. Some of our favorite trainings here, some of my favorite trainings that I have co-facilitated are with peers. Again, just that wisdom and knowledge just makes people say, wow, you know, these people get it. The roles that are not so good for peers to, perform in any kind of a program are roles where, again, there's this very defined power differential. So something like, conducting head counts, medication management, drug testing, instituting disciplinary measures. Again, any kind of activity where there's a punitive element to it should be left to the case management role, not to peers. So the most important job expectation of a peer within any one of those roles, right, whether you're running a group, outreach and engagement, the expectation is that part of your job will be to share your story, And that's a lot easier said than done. All right, because there's an art to self-disclosure. Deciding what to share, when to share it, and with whom is one of the key tasks of peers. And so really, this is the art of being a peer, and we get better and better at it the more that we do it. So the first thing to keep in mind is don't assume you know another's experience, right? We never want to make the assumption, and we certainly never want to say, I know exactly what you're going through. Because the fact is, do we? We might have an idea, but we never know exactly what someone has gone through. And, people feel a unique connection to their own pain, to their own journey. Let that be theirs. Let that be theirs. But what we can do, and again, this is something that we get better at over time, is to look for common themes. So we don't know the exact details of someone's experience, of their recovery journey, but there are certainly common themes. Let's say the impact of an addiction on one's family, losing jobs, a sense of letting people down, the fear of relapse. And so through connections made, common experiences with these challenges, this is how you can connect your story to your client's story, right? Not by assuming that we know how they feel, but we have gone through these similar aspects of this life challenge. In terms of sharing biographical information, do that selectively. And by that, I mean how you grew up, right? Your family of origin, maybe your own trauma history. I would tread very lightly there, because what we don't want to do, again, is to trigger clients. And the way to what to use as a guide of like, what should I share is, will this information be useful for my clients? Am I sharing this for my own sake because I have stuff that I need to get off my chest? Or will it really, truly be useful information for them? So be especially careful sharing details of traumatic life events, which can be triggering for clients. However, if there are cultural issues that you want to share, maybe issues about sexual identity, sexual preference, use your judgment. Use your judgment in sharing. And again, it always has to be about the client, not about you. What we don't want to do is dump our issues or problems on clients, which is then one added burden that they certainly don't need. Share details of your recovery journey as one possibility. Okay, again, our goal is not to persuade or steer people in a certain direction, but rather to offer them options. This is really important. One of the questions that I ask in a case manager training is it your job as a case manager to give people advice? And, a lot of them will say, sure, that's why I'm a case manager. Otherwise, what am I doing? And the fact is, in the human services, our job is not to give advice. It's to offer options, right? People need to make their own choices. And so what we don't want to do is to steer people. And again, this is where, the power differential comes in. Our opinion has weight. Our opinion matters. What we don't want to do is to steer people in a certain direction that their heart is telling them not to go in, but, well, you're the expert, you must know. And then there's a bad outcome. And then it's sort of what? Our fault? And in the other direction, if what we're sort of steering clients strongly toward works out, well, there's also that sense that we're taking something away from them. It's almost disempowering because they didn't come to that conclusion themselves. And so we have to trust our clients. We have to share information, including our own recovery journey, but we don't want to impose it. And so trying to think of an example, there are some clients in recovery who are thinking about medical assisted treatment, right? Buprenorphine, those injections, right? And so there may be a peer who feels that that's not true recovery because you're still on a substance. Well, that's your own business, right? We wouldn't want to share that, right? Your job would be to help the client explore what's involved in medical assisted treatment for an opioid addiction, and might that be the right choice for them versus, let's say, NA, right? You might be a 12-step person. That's not for everybody. So again, you can share your journey, but it's only one possibility. And don't allow your story to overshadow the client's story, right? Balance sharing your personal experience with getting to know the person in front of you, because that's the other part of the job of peer. It's not just share your story. It's in the sharing and through the sharing of your story, you are inviting the clients to share their story with you. And guess what? That happens at their own pace. Again, so it's not like a, tit for tat where, well, I told you something, now you have to tell me something, right? People, building trust takes time, and we have to let people reach that place in their own time. But never forget that we shouldn't be the ones doing all of the talking and all of the sharing, because we need to get to know the person sitting in front of us. So that was a lot about the role of peer. I want to talk now about organizational dynamics, right? Because the peer is a team member. You're part of a system of care. And for any program, hiring peers is a systems change. It should be a systems change. Let me say that. Adding a peer is not just a matter of, I think we'll add another case management job. A peer is a very unique role. And any model of care integrating peer services is really a totally new model of care. So you see the role of peer, your role, other staff, managers, supervisors. You're in an organizational culture, which can strongly influence how much you like your work, how easy or difficult your work is. And then there's the larger community. How does the community see all of this? So we talked about safety for clients by helping them understand what your role is. And so obviously, to help them understand what your role is, you have to understand what your role is. And it starts with a clear job description. So everyone should get a job description and read the job description. I've been at the Connection for 25 years. I don't remember what my job description says, but I've changed roles many times. And it's read your job description, because what your job description will tell you is what is expected of you. What the job description won't tell you is where and how does your position fit in to the larger model. And it's equally important for you to know that. So you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. What are other roles? So it's not just important to know your role. It's how does this fit into what other people do? Expectations on you should be measurable and task-based. This is really important, not unlike, there's a strong parallel process going on here. We say, clients have the right to know, how will I know if I'm doing well in this program? You're going to report back to the funder on my progress. What does progress look like? Well, you as peers need to know the same thing. If someone is doing a performance review on you as a peer, right, it should be based on measurable tasks. Did you do this or didn't you do it? And, how well did you do it? But it should be concrete. It shouldn't be left up in the air. Sometimes for peers, the administrative parts of the job can be a real barrier. Case notes, reporting, things like that. What we have found is that we've worked with wonderful peers here who just bring so much value to the treatment team and really help clients get to the next phase in their recovery. What's hard for them are keeping up on case notes, maybe treatment planning, and again, reports, data keeping. So these are the tasks that are not fun for anybody, frankly, but they're part of your job. And so if you need extra help and extra coaching, don't be afraid to ask for help. And this last point is that any treatment model with the added dimension of peer support needs to be thoroughly reviewed by all staff, right? Including a discussion of the potential impact on current roles. Now, that's not necessarily on you, that's more on the program management. But, ideally, and I say that ideally, people shouldn't be coming up to you and saying, what do you do? What do you do? I don't really understand, right? Because you're part of a team and everyone on the team needs to be trained on this new model. So in the ideal agency culture, which let me say rarely exists, okay, this is like the ideal, hiring peers to work in programs is the natural outcome of an organization that has truly embraced a recovery-oriented approach. And what do we mean by that? Services are strengths-based, right? They're not sort of problem-saturated, problem-focused. They're person-centered, culturally influenced. They're flexible and responsive. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's like it or lump it, this is what we have, right? To the degree possible, services are flexible. They're based on best practices. That is always important. What has been proven to work. They promote recovery through addressing trauma and developing healthy relationships, right? Those social connections. It involves allies, peers, family, community supports, right? Family members can come to treatment planning meetings. And it is data and outcome focused. Again, is what we're doing working? It might sound good on paper. Are we actually helping people, right? Programs, ideally need to have metrics that let everyone on the team know how well are we doing. And the board, the CEO, and all staff will understand and deeply value the role of peers in this recovery-oriented system. Everyone's on board. Now, how often in life does the perfect situation present itself? Well, maybe sometimes, but not often. And so in a less than ideal culture, program policies and practices may be in direct conflict with stated program values. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that, it's a value of the program. We value client choice, blah, blah, blah. But you have to do X, Y, Z and, whatever. And if you don't, you're going to be discharged. You as a peer are going to look at things with eyes that see clearly. That's the best way that I can say it. Peers on treatment teams tend to be the truth tellers. They see through BS. And that is a value, right? Really, programs need people who see things clearly, who aren't just sort of going to swallow the party line. But you're also part of a team. So we can't be bumping up against stuff all the time. What we have to be careful about is colluding with clients against program rules, right? We have to balance advocacy for our clients and client-centered treatment with our responsibilities as an employee of an organization and a team member. I remember clearly I was part of a learning collaborative with other organizations of, integrating peers into your treatment teams. And there was a man from an organization, I think he was the head of quality assurance or something. And he sort of complained, he said, the peers that we have, he said, first of all the clients want to talk to the peer. None of the clients want to talk to the case managers. And the clients don't want to attend our groups. They only want the medically assisted treatment, right? They only want their injection and then they want to go. And he felt that the peers were supporting clients in that. You don't have to go to this group if you don't want to. Well, the fact of the matter is that this organization got federal funding for specific elements in a program, right? And so they got federal funding to run this program, to pay staff if there was medical assisted treatment and group participation, and having case management services was also an expectation. or the program didn't get federal funding. So you could see that in that case, a client choice might not be, oh, sure, give me a case manager and I want to attend groups. It would be the job of the peer, not to force clients to attend groups, but to say, this is our program model. And to know why these groups exist, frankly, right? It's not enough just to get this injection. It might, seem like that's a good idea, but actually these groups have value. People who have, attended these groups have gotten whatever out of it. But you could certainly decide that it's not for you, because then guess what? This might not be the program for them. So the point is that you need to balance advocacy for client choice with a clear understanding of what are the expectations of the program that you're working for. And sometimes that could be a hard balancing act. Current staff may be unsure why peers are necessary, or may feel devalued or threatened by the level of engagement that peers can achieve with clients. Just like that man from that organization years ago said, no one wants to talk to the case managers. Well, that's a problem. I don't know, maybe with the case managers, I don't know anything about it. But the fact is that everyone on the treatment team has value, including peers, including case managers. They have a role. Change is hard for people. Change is hard. No one wants change. We just all kind of like to keep doing what we're doing. It's hard to adapt. And this is something that we realized too, when we did that research project, that we talked about the outcomes that, clients with peers had much better outcomes. They even had better health outcomes. All of these great improved outcomes from having a peer. We didn't realize the extent that the case managers who had been working in the program all along ended up feeling devalued. Now, maybe that was a function of us overstressing the great outcomes of our project, which we were all rightly very excited about. And again, it's not on you to make case managers feel better about themselves, but we all have to have a sense that every role is important. And part of your job will be forming this special supportive relationship and helping clients understand the value of other roles as well, because there's a team that exists for a reason. You may come across stigmatizing, biased attitudes toward clients. People might say things. I remember in one program, staff were saying, calling people frequent flyers. Oh, this is a frequent flyer of, and the peer, actually said that's, discriminatory language. It's not a healthy way to refer to clients who are relapsing. And so saying that respectfully, and again, this comes from relationships based on trust with your coworkers, right? You might feel the need to speak up. How that comes across, whatever, that's, up to you. But I would think that part of your work would be to be sensitive to these issues. Not that you're calling out everyone all the time, but what you notice, speak up, or even tell your supervisor, I'm hearing a lot of staff refer to our clients in these ways, and I don't think it's right. And sometimes what happens is that if there's lack of role clarity, you may be used as a jack of all trades. This has also tended to happen with peers. And again, it tends to happen if maybe everyone is not crystal clear about what exactly is your role. So, hey, can you make 50 copies of this for me? Or, can you do this? Now, every job description says, do this, and other duties as outlined, meaning no one is, expected never to be asked to do something that's not on that job description. But certainly if at any time you feel like the boundaries of your role are being massively, blurred, and you're asked to do things that you really don't feel are part of your job, please talk about that with your supervisor, because that is a devaluation of your role. And what's the single factor that contributes most significantly to the professional success of peers? and positive client outcomes? It's the supervisor. It's good supervision. Good supervision and support is absolutely necessary for peers to thrive and function at an optimal level in a program. So I hope that every peer has support, has a level of support that they feel is adequate or more than adequate, and that you use supervision as an opportunity to learn more about the job, to brainstorm, to run difficult situations by your supervisor. You know, how do you think I handled that? I'm not sure. I can't stress this enough, that supervision should never just be about what did you do, you know, how many clients did you serve, but what is the work like for you? What is your experience of this work like? It doesn't mean that your supervisor is your therapist, because again, that's a boundary violation, right? But certainly part of your supervision should be, how are you doing? And if you're not asked that question and you feel the need to talk about it, raise it. You know, I am feeling challenged because of this, whatever happens to be going on. So good supervision is really critical, and the best supervisor can't help you if you're not sort of opening up to them and also reaching out to them. So I want to end talking about self-care, which is important for anyone in the human services, but especially for peers, especially for peers. Self-care is not a luxury. It's a professional obligation. So I just want to let that sink in, right? Some of us think of self-care as, oh, I'm really stressed out, but I'm going to plan a vacation next month, and I'm just going to hold on by my fingernails until then. That's not good self-care, right? Self-care is really noticing what is going on with us every day, multiple times during the day, right? It's taking breaks if we're feeling overwhelmed. It's knowing what is going on inside us, because if we're feeling stressed, we're not going to have it to give to our clients. Because the fact is, work in the human services can be massively frustrating, okay? We want our clients to make progress, but progress can seem slow, erratic, or non-existent. You know, interestingly, you probably heard the term burnout, right? Compassion fatigue. The factor that most significantly contributes to burnout of staff is not working too many hours or working too hard, right? Think about it. We can work a lot of hours. We can be working really hard. If we feel like we're getting somewhere and we're really helping people, it's actually energizing. What contributes most significantly to burnout is feeling that we're not effective. We're working those long hours. We're putting our all into it, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere. The clients don't seem to be connecting and engaging with us. That's what burnout really comes from. And sometimes it happens that clients don't seem to be making progress. We took the job to help others, and not everyone wants our help. This is kind of a bitter pill to swallow, so to speak, for many in the helping services who assume that everyone who enters the program wants the kind of help that the program is giving. And so one example is that we have a supportive housing program, which is, it houses homeless families who are involved with DCF. And a component of it is case management. And so some clients, I don't want to say most, but a significant number, if given the choice, would say, give me the housing and you can keep the case management. Some clients appreciate and take advantage of the case management, but not all. So what is it like to be working with a family who seems to not want you there, right? So these are the challenges of how do we engage with people? How do we acknowledge, not unlike that situation that I shared about, part of the treatment for substance use was, going to a group. I realized that it's not your first choice to be at this group. Is there anything that I could do to make it easier for you? And check in with them. Talk to them about the group, let's say, that they might not have wanted to go to, because that's what keeps people engaged. But the fact of the matter is that individuals' motivations for going into care of any kind are not necessarily what we might think they might be, right? And so motivation levels differ, and that's challenging for us. Clients can violate our boundaries and the norms of common courtesy. As I said, when people get angry, people are human, they say things, they act in ways that can be really hurtful toward us. That's hard on us, right? We're not robots, we have feelings. Work with clients may stir up our own trauma issues. This is something that is very much pertinent to individuals who have the shared lived experience, whether it's a peer role or not, right? When you're sort of immersed with individuals who are struggling with the same issues that you might have successfully made it through, it still can be traumatizing and bring up things from the past in ways that we don't even anticipate. Our ability to empathize puts us at risk. Sometimes we can care too much. We can care too much. We're thinking about work when we're home, right? And we have our own stressful lives, right? Our lives are more than work. And so where does work end and our private life begin, right? If we feel like we have to be on all the time, or again, we're bringing client issues into our own personal life, and we feel like we can't maintain that boundary. So self-care really begins with self-awareness, right? It is impossible to take good care of ourselves if we sort of act like we're super people, superheroes, and we're just going to plow through it regardless, right? We have to become attuned to our own emotional state, to our own level of stress, to even begin to think about self-care. I like this quote from the educator John Dewey. We don't learn from experiences. We learn from reflecting on our experience. All right, because we can go through things, if we don't then reflect on them, we're not going to learn from them. And really, the ability to self-reflect hinges on being self-aware and taking care of ourselves. So we need to be aware of feeling responsible for the progress of our clients, right? Remember that the people we support are autonomous human beings who make their own life decisions, right? They make their own life decisions, and we can't feel responsible for them. We do what we could do to the best of our ability, and in the end, we have to give them the dignity of making their own choices. In the same way, feeling and acting responsible for the behaviors of your client. We're not there to act as their conscience. And sometimes, helpers get angry and annoyed at clients. We might be thinking they're not trying hard enough. What are they doing? Why are they doing this? And again, that self-awareness of it is them, it is their choices, right? We can't wave a magic wand and make people better, right? All we could do is offer what we're offering. Giving advice, telling clients what to do, persuading them to, again, take a certain course of action is never what we're supposed to be doing. We could share our experience and what worked for us, what has worked for others. But in the end, clients make their own choices, right? So we can't be disappointed if we worked really hard to, let's say, sign someone up for some kind of community resource, and in the end, they decide not to do it. It can feel like a slap in the face, but really, another way to look at it is that if our work is effective, we are empowering people to make their own choices and to do what they think they need to do. Doing too much, giving too much, right? Doing for people. We're not supposed to do things for, we are supposed to do things with our clients. That said, sometimes people need more support than we might think they do. I remember I was working with a foster child, young man, who was signing up for his first college course. And the case manager worked really hard to set everything up. And all he had to do was go to Southern, and we told him which building and all this, and he wasn't doing it. He wasn't doing it, and it was going to be too late. And so we actually had a foster child peer, someone who had graduated from the foster care system, who said, "Do you want me to take you there?" And he was so grateful. And he was embarrassed to ask. And it wasn't, it's just, sometimes people need that extra bit of help and support. And the foster care peer got it, right? Because he remembers feeling a sense of shame, like I should be able to do this. Everyone's expecting me to do it. The case manager works so hard. What is wrong with me? And it just took saying, do you want me to go with you? And I could wait in the car. And that's what it took. So, there's an art to that too, knowing when to take that extra step, knowing when we're doing too much for someone and maybe taking a step back. Another warning sign is engaging in too many boundary crossings, right? Is the relationship veering more into a friendship? Are we starting to loan clients money? Are we going to events with them after work hours? Now, again, this may or may not be part of your job. I don't think loaning clients money would ever be part of your job, but maybe, attending a 12-step group, something like that. Just knowing, again, is this part of my job or is it not? And we especially need to watch out for viewing recovery, yours and theirs, in terms that are too narrow. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes if we ask, what is recovery? It's very problem focused. So if the problem is I lost my child to DCF, the solution will be, I'm going to get my child back. And that's my goal, right? I will get my child back. If the problem was I was in jail for 10 years, the goal, I'm not going to go back to jail. And these are perfectly good goals, don't get me wrong. I abuse substances, I will be substance free. I have a mental health diagnosis, I will achieve symptom control, right? I'm not going to experience any symptoms. And, the overarching goal is, what we call independent functioning in the community. And I want to just invite you to think about recovery in much broader terms, right? In much broader terms. Because the fact is, some people don't get their kids back from DCF care. Sometimes parental rights are terminated. Sometimes people go back to jail. Relapse, we know, is part of recovery for some individuals, including maybe you as peers. And with a mental health diagnosis, it's the rare person who has a mental health challenge who never ever experiences symptoms. And so these are worthy goals, but it can't end there, right? Because what do we really want for people? This is another quote from Bessel van der Kolk. Our life work consists of finding our place in the community of human beings. And the fact is that the real power and value of peer support is the unique ability to walk with clients through a very challenging process that in the end will help them rebuild their lives, regardless of relapse, regardless of maybe I didn't get my child back. What does that mean? You're still living, helping individuals figure out how to rebuild their lives and maybe even inspiring them to be a peer and give back. And in the end, finding their place back in the community of human beings, overcoming that sense of I am different, overcoming the stigma. I want to end with this definition of recovery that comes from something called the citizenship model. Michael Rowe from Yale developed this idea that recovery involves these elements. Finding a way of being in the world that brings peace, inner joy, and a sense of connectedness through healthy relationships, full access to rights and resources, having valued roles, and fulfilling responsibilities. Think about that. No one wants to be a service recipient their whole life. And so that's why the role of peer is this very important bridge role. You hold up hope for the clients that you serve. You show that recovery is possible, giving back is possible, and that rebuilding a life is also possible.